At number 10, the Anita experiment, the scientific discovery that proves the existence of parallel universes. Now, okay, this one isn't technically aliens per se, but I wanted to mention it first because not only is it real, but come on, what's more exciting? Extraterrestrial visitors or extra-dimensional ones? Huh? Imagine a remote research station in Antarctica where scientists diligently hunt for cosmic rays. Now that's intriguing on its own, but it gets even better. See, naturally they had their instruments facing the sky, but then these researchers suddenly detect not one, but two signals shooting out of the ground beneath them, defying all logic. See, these rays of neutrinos are supposed to come from supernova, so it's highly improbable that the rays are passing through the Earth without coming into contact with a single particle of matter, only to land on a tiny weather balloon in the sky. To make sense of this, scientists dived into over 40 papers offering a buffet of explanations. Dark matter, elusive particles called sterile neutrinos, and then, the grandest of them all, a parallel universe, essentially a mirror image of ours, but where time runs backwards. Imagine that! This audacious idea isn't pulled out of thin air either. It's rooted in actual science, a theorem which hints that alongside our universe, an antimatter universe stretches backward through time before the Big Bang. But let's tap the brakes here, because a more down-to-earth theory has surfaced. That's right, hold your antimatter horses, because it turns out it's more likely that these signals were simply reflected off of ice or skipped off subglacial lakes. The truth, it seems, is more grounded, reflecting high-energy particles, not parallel dimensions. Sorry, y'all. I mean, unless you want to go ahead and put away Occam's razor. But before I do, if you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9, alien fossils. Back in 1996, NASA dropped a bombshell. Well, not literally. They stumbled upon a meteorite from Mars right there on our very own Antarctica. This space wanderer, a potato-shaped piece of Martian real estate, harbored something truly astonishing, a fossilized microbe. That's like finding a cosmic postcard in your backyard. This meteorite most likely embarked on a 15 million year journey across our solar neighborhood before cozying up on Earth. Now, let's dig deeper. The rock didn't just bring this Martian visitor, it also packed organic molecules. But before we declare aliens, bear in mind that this is an ongoing debate in the scientific arena. Some argue that this is a smoking pew-pew of extraterrestrial existence, while skeptics keep their feet firmly on Earth. What's your take on this otherworldly puzzle? At number 8 is the frozen ancient civilization. Enter Corey Goode, a name synonymous with the clandestine narrative that spirals deep beneath the Antarctic ice. The year was 2017 when Goode's voice resonated through the annals of conspiratorial discourse, asserting that a buried treasure lay beneath 2 miles of frigid ice, an ancient alien civilization, frozen in time. But let's rewind to 1939, a German expedition that allegedly stumbled upon this enigma. Fast forward to 2002, and the site begrudgingly opened its icy gate to scientists and archaeologists. What's captivating is Goode's own voyage, facilitated by the US Air Force, to witness the fabled civilization. A civilization that was rumored to be standing 55,000 years in Earth's past. This story leaves us yearning for forthcoming years to yield more insights into these Antarctic enigmas. At number 7, the Antarctic pyramids. In 2016, rumors of pyramid-like mountains circulated the internet, capturing the imaginations of many. Could it be a creation of ancient civilizations, or perhaps, cue the dramatic pause, evidence of ancient extraterrestrial intervention? This square-based pyramid is perched upon the Ellsworth Range, standing around 4,000 feet tall. That's like 10 times the size of the pyramids of Giza. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Or should I say, tip of the pyramid? Reports of plant and bacterial life dating back eons also have come to light, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, a prehistoric, or should I say pre-human society once grazed this frigid expanse, crafting not only pyramids but also tending to the vegetation. Bam! Proof of ancient aliens. Or just a neat geological formation. I'll let y'all decide in the comments. At number 6, Admiral Byrd's Crystal City. Esteemed US naval officer Admiral Richard Byrd was one of the first pilots to fly over both poles, organizing Operation High Jump, the largest expedition to ever travel to Antarctica with all kinds of ships, aircraft, and crew in order to scout locations for potential military bases. But during his explorations, Admiral Admiral Byrd allegedly came upon something highly unexpected. The following comes not from a public account, but from his own diary discovered by his son after Byrd's passing, in which he recounts an extraordinary discovery. Upon encountering a large cave in the South Pole through which he could easily fly his plane, Byrd steers his plane into the opening and flew underneath the earth. As he flies within the massive cave, he encroaches upon an incredibly temperate and lush environment, not something you'd expect in the South Pole. But that's just the beginning. He tells about how he sees a shimmering rainbow city made out of crystal. Suddenly he loses control of his plane as flying disc-shaped objects lead him to the ground, whereupon he's escorted to a being which he refers to as the Master in his diary, who tells Byrd that it's massively disappointed with nuclear weapons and how they've recently destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, seeming to really be concerned with what's going on the surface, telling Byrd that these aliens hope humanity will ultimately stop this. At number 5, a UFO is discovered. In October of 2020, satellite images of Antarctica unveiled a peculiar sight. Amidst the icy expanse, an object resembling a semicircular flying saucer emerged, slightly elevated and casting a telltale shadow. Believed by some to be an ancient aircraft dating back thousands if not millions of years. The notion of aliens opting for this secluded spot brims with intrigue. However, before we leap into intergalactic conclusions, it's essential that we exercise caution. While this image sparks conjecture, we do lack conclusive evidence about its origin or purpose. At number 4 is the alien base. If this next story is to be believed, there's allegedly a secret alien base with advanced and unconventional weapons hidden in the icy waters of the Antarctic. According to a video uploaded by UFO hunters, a mysterious anomaly about 180 kilometers off the coast of Antarctica has been spotted. They speculate that it's not just some kind of hangar for a spaceship, but that actual aliens might be residing there too. Now this may veer toward the conspiracy side rather than urban legend, but hey, it's all in good fun. Some believers are advocating for an expedition to confirm the existence of these aliens, while others voice concerns about potentially sparking an intergalactic war if we're not careful. So whatever it is, let's just hope we tread carefully. At number 3, the Kraken. The Kraken is a legendary maritime menace straight from the annals of Scandinavian folklore, a colossal cephalopod-like creature feared for its ship-swallowing antics and sailor-dragging tendencies. But could this creature of nautical nightmares actually be an alien? Yeah, you heard me right. A Reddit user named Bavin Hunter has set their investigative sights on Google Earth, claiming that they spot what appears to be a Kraken near Deception Island in Antarctica. Quite the ironic location, I must say. They suggest that this dark spot lurking in the depths might just be this mystical monster. Granted, we've got some real-life cephalopods that can stir the imagination, but they're not exactly Kraken-sized. Or maybe it's a cryptic alien being lurking beneath the icy depths. At number 2, alien DNA. Traces of potential alien DNA were discovered in the Antarctic, a mind-boggling revelation that recently shook the scientific community regarding DNA traces found beyond the depths of certain Antarctic caverns. Algae DNA, intertwined with fragments from minute creatures, paints a picture of potential alien origin. Though no immediate creatures were unearthed, this discovery opens portals to speculation. Could Antarctica, once deemed a barren expanse, have teemed with diverse life forms? For life here are akin to an extraterrestrial habitat, hinting at hidden chambers harboring unexpected life. Warmth emanating from beneath the icy veneer adds to the intrigue, making it plausible for life to have gained a foothold here. At number 1 is the crashed UFO on Google Maps. In the realm of mysterious Antarctic enigmas, 2019 incident lit the extraterrestrial fuse. Enter Scott C. Waring, a fervent UFO enthusiast who, armed with Google Maps, embarked on a digital Antarctic odyssey. His pixelated gaze locked onto a triangular UFO ensnared within the icy clutches. With a distinctive hump and formidable edges, this alien ridge, should the thought unshackle this craft, could we witness an eerie revival of extraterrestrial occupants? This UFO trapped in icy stasis awaits a tangible inquiry, as its revelation could potentially reshape our cosmic worldview. So as we peel back the layers of ice and venture deeper into Antarctic's hidden past, we're left with a trove of unsolved puzzles. Are these clues pointing to the extraterrestrial visitors, or are they simply the product of natural phenomena that we've yet to fully comprehend? The allure of the unknown keeps us asking questions, keeps us searching for that flicker of insight that might illuminate the truth. And whether you find yourself firmly grounded in skepticism or ready to embrace the possibility of otherworldly contact, one thing is for sure: the Antarctic holds its secrets close.
Number 10. Glass sponges. These mysterious creatures could give scientists the key to understanding some crucial components to climate change. At one time, this curious species of sponge was thought to be extinct, but then in 1987 a Canadian team of scientists discovered a cluster that was over 9,000 years old. It was over 9,000! That's pretty insane. Yeah, that's also a fact. They can live for thousands of years. They feed off plankton and other small sources of food and can filter enough water in 60 seconds to fill an Olympic-sized pool. They also don't look appetizing and mostly serve as homes to other kinds of fish and crustaceans and that stuff. Starfish tend to feed on them because they're really weird, but that's about it. The thing that makes them so interesting though is their ability to store carbon. Ever since the ice shelf started to disappear, they started appearing in Antarctica. They're called glass sponges because they're made of silica. If scientists are able to figure out the correlation between the two, then it might reveal some key factors about climate change. Can I say it never will be solved? Not quite, but it certainly does feel like a mystery worth solving. Number 9. The C-130. Another aircraft gone without a trace. Chilean Air Force Flight C-130 left Patagonia, Chile and was bound for King George Island in Antarctica. They were meant to bring supplies and personnel to inspect a floating fuel supply line, but they never made it. They lost contact with the plane around 9:13 p.m. and no one heard anything about the plane having any issues. They conducted a search by air using aircrafts from the Chilean Air Force, Argentina, Brazil, the UK, US and Uruguay, but nothing. There were no signs of the crash, that is until debris was found floating 31 kilometers from its last known position. But to this day, no one knows exactly what happened during that fateful crash that stole their lives. Number 8. The Gamburtsev Mountains. Actual mountains of ice will have to melt until this mystery is completely solved. Until then, it's a pretty marvelous mountainous mystery. Stretching across 1,200 kilometers and rising a third of the height of Mount Everest are the Gamburtsev Mountains, except they are hidden underneath 2 to 4 kilometers of ice. They are named after Gregory A. Gamburtsev, a Soviet geophysicist who made the discovery in 1958. From what they can tell through radar technology, the mountains are over 1 billion years old. They've been able to map the mountains by abnormal gravity fluctuations, but by all scientific reasons they should have eroded by now, but they haven't. One hypothesis is that the erosion process simply paused once the ice got thick enough, but still we won't really know the answer until we can fully look at those mountains, and it might take 1 billion years for that ice to melt, so who knows. Number 7. Shackleton's lost ship. Ooh, love a good lost ship story. Ironically, Captain Shackleton's ship was named the Endurance and was supposed to be ideal for navigating the icy waters of Antarctica. But alas, Sir Ernest Shackleton along with his faithful crew were forced to abandon ship in 1915. The Endurance became trapped by massive boulders of ice and then began to sink beneath the Weddell Sea. The crew escaped though, which is good, traveling 720 nautical miles before they were able to reach shore and be rescued. Researchers in the UK were captivated by its loss and desperately desired to retrieve it, and they finally attempted it in 2019. They got a whole team together, but unfortunately the escapade was unsuccessful. The submarine they sent looking for it ended up trapped down there as well. They never saw it again and were not able to find the wreckage while they were at it. So, whether or not the Endurance continues to endure beneath the waves of that unforgiving portion of the sea, we will never know. Or if they try again, who knows. Number 6. Edgar Evans. By all counts, Edgar Evans was a positive, cheerful member of Robert Falcon Scott's soon-to-be doomed expedition to the South Pole. So when Edgar started to act distant and his temperament started changing, his team knew something was wrong. Canadian Dr. R.C.F. Falk came to the conclusion that he died from accidental anthrax poisoning in 1986. Anthrax could have been trapped within the ice, and Evans' mental and physical health declined when he hit his head on the Beardmore Glacier. The doctor on the crew believed it was due to damage to his skull. Then, as his symptoms changed, they thought it was scurvy, dehydration, or the high altitude causing the problems. But even before the Beardmore Glacier, his mood was changing, so it couldn't have been the fall or the ice. To this day, no one really knows how or why he died. He just didn't come back after lunch one day, and Scott recorded, "I was the first to reach the poor man and was shocked by his appearance. He was on his knees with his clothes disarrayed, hands covered and frostbitten, and a wild look in his eyes." Unquote. He later died, and the site of his grave has never been found, so without an autopsy, We may never find out. Number 5. Rodney Marks. This is a case colder than any iceberg in the South Pole, and it will forever remain that way. Rodney Marks was an astrophysicist who worked at the South Pole at the Amundsen Scott Base in 2000. He suddenly fell really ill and passed away, so they put his body into storage until a coroner could review him. Turns out the cause of death was methanol poisoning. Methanol was used as a cleaning solution at the base, and somehow lethal amounts of it were found in his system. And accidental ingestion were overruled when syringe marks were found in his arm. The question of murder rose instead. Mark's colleagues quickly left when the spring came before a proper inquiry could be made, and New Zealand police were met with a wall of silence. With the same people living day in and day out, who knows how high tensions rose, but with tons of evidence thrown away and the findings never released, this is one case that will remain frozen in more ways than one. Number 4. Xavier Mertz. For over a century, many believe the survival of Douglas Mawson during the 1912 South Pole expedition was an open and shut case. It was a miraculous case of human resilience, but historian David Dogg believes that Mawson's loyalty to his dying friend wasn't what it appeared to be. Their other accomplice died earlier on in the adventure when he fell into a crevice along with a sled and all their supplies. Mertz and Mawson only had a few things. They tried to make it back on rations, but Mertz died on January 27th. But Day thinks that Mawson cut the rations, therefore making Mertz perish first. Even with what they had to eat the sled dogs, and Mawson recorded they killed the last dog on December 28th, but he still described cooking dog meat on January 10th, leading Day to believe that he may have eaten another corpse lying around. Yeah, Mertz's body has never been found, and may never be, especially if nothing is left. Not even time will be able to reveal what really happened, so I guess I'll stay with Mawson. Number 3. The anomaly. Who knows what is trapped beneath the billion-year-old ice that coats Antarctica? Mountains, disease, forests, who knows, but there's one thing that scientists can't quite unravel. Beneath Wilkes Land in Antarctica, there's an object 151 miles across and 2,700 feet deep that could change what we know of human history. Scientists believe that it may be from space, perhaps the asteroid that caused the Permian-Triassic extinction. It was first discovered in 2006 when NASA spotted gravitational changes in the area indicating an object of immense size. Is it an asteroid, or is it something bigger? Something so huge that it may even answer the age-old question of what else is out there. Some conspiracies revolve around a spaceship that may have crashed here billions of years ago. Whatever the case, we may not be around when the ice finally decides to reveal it. So that sucks for us, I guess. Number 2. The ship Jenny. Fact or fiction, the existence of the ship Jenny may be lost to history and continue to be dismissed as a myth. But here is the story so you can decide for yourself. The tale goes that Jenny became trapped in an ice barrier at the Drake Passage in 1823. It was allegedly discovered in 1840 by a whaling ship poetically called Hope, and the captain made a disturbing discovery. The ship looked as though it was still being manned, with 7 members of the crew standing to attention on the deck. But as they got closer, it was then they realized they were dead. The entire crew was preserved by the Antarctic cold. Even creepier was the logbook, which featured this entry. May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. Unquote. The captain who wrote this was found sitting, still as death, in the chair. The tale has been romanticized in a novel called The Ghost Ship by John Conroy Hutchinson, so perhaps that's why people think it's just a story. But I guess we'll never know, will we? Number 1. Carl Robert Dish. Out of all the cases on this list, this one is definitely the most mysterious and will remain just that, a mystery. Carl worked for the National Bureau of Standards and was staying at Bird Station in 1965 just for the winter. Something he normally had to do was follow a hand line to the main station complex so he never got lost. But on May 8th, he went out on a trip he made over 25 times, only this time he didn't return. When he did not return to Bird Station, they went searching and did find a trail leading west. The weather was pretty bad and it was really dark, so the next day they decided to head out with vehicles. They found tracks again, heading south, but then they just disappeared. They noted that his steps seemed purposeful and that his stride didn't vary, like he was heading towards something. Searches continued for days and days, but no sign of Dirch was ever found. Number 10. A giant hole. And by giant I mean 2/3 the area of Manhattan and nearly 1,000 feet tall, large enough to have once held 15 billion tons of ice. Beneath the Thwaites Glacier in West Antarctica, there is a gap between the glacier and the bedrock that was discovered only recently by NASA scientists. Much of the void, as they are calling it, is a result of the melting that has occurred over the last few years. According to Eric Rigneau, scientists had suspected that the Thwaites Glacier was not attached to the bedrock beneath it. This void in the ice has helped reveal to researchers how much the ground has shifted between 1992 to 2017 and continues to lead to more discoveries, and who knows what's next? Number 9. Super seals. I'm very glad that I will never know what it's like to survive in the perilous and unforgiving icy tundra that is Antarctica, especially since you need to be a super seal to survive there. Weddell seals had researchers perplexed for a while because they have an uncanny ability of knowing where the gaps in the ice are so they can come up for air. Weddell seals can dive down hundreds of meters while hunting and still find their way up to breathing holes with ease. After years of study, in 2014 the National Science Foundation announced the apparent cause. They may have a sixth sense, and no, it's not that they can see other dead seals. By using the Earth's magnetic field as a natural GPS, these seals are able to find the openings in the ice. Still crazy to me. So not only are they adorable, incredible divers and hunters, they can predict where they need to go in order to survive, which is insane to me. Number 8. Glass sponges. No, they aren't actually made of glass, but the reason they are called that is because of the fact that their skeletons contain silica, which is a component of glass. They act as filters and basically pick up any food that passes by and can live for centuries. They don't only grow in Antarctica, but they seem to be playing a very curious role in the area. Ever since ice shelves began disappearing due to global warming, the appearance of glass sponges has increased. There seems to be a correlation between the two, and scientists are trying to work out what the exact cause is. If they figure it out, they will not only be able to understand the ecology better, but also understand how these creatures store carbon. This could help researchers understand some of the key components behind climate change, so it is definitely a mystery worth solving. Number 7. A perfect rectangle. Now, usually when someone says icebergs, first you think of the Titanic, rest in peace, and 2, you might imagine them looking massive and jagged and the whole metaphor of like there's so much going on beneath. But NASA spotted one that caused a couple furrowed brows. It was perfectly rectangular. This type of iceberg actually has a name, and they are called tabular icebergs. They have steep, nearly vertical sides and a flat top. They spotted what was essentially a massive ice sheet cake while doing a routine aerial survey. NASA tweeted the reason for this anomaly and said, "The iceberg's sharp angles and flat surface indicate that it probably recently calved from the ice shelf. The rectangular ice sheet itself is so massive that if it were to melt, the amount of water could fill every swimming pool in California several times over." Crazy. That just goes to show how much water is actually in Antarctica. Number 6. A lava lake. And no, I didn't say lava cake, but boy do I wish I did. But it is still surprising that somewhere tucked beneath all of that ice there is a pool of lava? What? On Saunders Island there lives one of 8 lava lakes found in the world. Scientists from the University College London and the British Antarctic Survey discovered the lake on the island due to thermal imaging from satellite data. They caught images of the volcano of Mount Michel and noticed a lake of lava sitting within its crater around 700 feet in diameter. The temperature reads at around 1,812 to 2,334 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 989 or 1,279 degrees Celsius. Which I guess isn't that surprising because it's lava. It's the hottest thing ever. But despite lava bubbling in volcanoes being a very common image associated with volcanoes, there have actually only been 8 ever seen. For the most part, lava dries into rock, which is the case with most of the 1,500 volcanoes on the Earth. So why, especially in such a cold climate, does this one stay molten? Scientists presume it's due to a combination of gases and steam that kind of lock in the heat, but they need to get a closer look, which could take years. Number 5. Green icebergs. Actual green, they're jade green. Green icebergs are a weird phenomenon that probably doesn't suit the default image of icebergs in your brain. All the way back to the 18th century, green icebergs have raised many questions and have even had myths built around them. For over 200 years, the mystery of why they happen is finally close to being solved. A research team at the University of Washington believe they have the answer to their unusual hue. Usually icebergs appear white and light blue because of the water, but now Stephen Warren has a new theory, and it relates to the same explanation for blood falls from our last video, which by the way, if you haven't watched it, go do that now. He believes that iron oxides are responsible for changing the color. Iron oxides are the same compound that create red-brown rust. When they react to oxygen, the iron oxides change the color of the ice. If this study is proven, this could also explain where phytoplankton get their nutrients from, and therefore explain how the whole ecosystem works. So very interesting. Number 4, creepy creatures. Researchers from the British Antarctic Survey were investigating the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf and were set on getting a sample of the sediment core. While drilling around 900 meters through the shelf, the drill hit a rock. But not only that, the camera attached to the drill caught a wealth of creatures latched onto the rock. These creatures, who probably haven't seen the light of day for thousands of years, were suddenly there, making scientists' jaws drop to the floor. Animals similar to sponges were attached, but this discovery opened up all new ideas about life on Earth. These creatures are supposed to rely on food to drift past in order to survive, but these ones are stationary and they are 1,500 kilometers upstream from the closest source of photosynthesis. How are they getting their nutrients and where? Number 3, Shackleton's lost ship. Somewhere trapped by mountains of ice is the Endurance. In 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton along with his crew had to abandon ship when the Endurance slipped beneath the Weddell Sea. The frozen water crushed the hull, so the crew escaped towards South Georgia Island in lifeboats. They traveled 720 nautical miles before they were rescued and left the Endurance where it continues to endure beneath the waves. The idea of recovering the ship has captivated the minds and hearts of seafaring historians and archaeologists for decades. Finally, a UK-led expedition attempted to relieve the ship of its glacial prison in 2019. They made a harrowing attempt but sadly came back with nothing. They sent a submarine to the ocean floor to look for the sunken polar yacht, but sadly the water took that too. They lost contact with it. One of the expedition members stated, "Like Shackleton before us, who described the graveyard of Endurance as the worst portion of the worst sea in the world, our well-laid plans were overcome by the rapidly moving ice and what Shackleton called the evil conditions of the Weddell Sea." Number 2, the anomaly. Somewhere beneath the frozen wasteland of Wilkes Land in Antarctica, there is something that could change our entire understanding of history. The area they are most curious about is 151 miles across and dives 2,700 feet deep. The most common hypothesis for what is under there is a massive asteroid, and not the one I previously mentioned that blew up before it hit last video. This asteroid is twice the size of the one that destroyed the dinosaurs. If it is indeed beneath the ice, it could be the asteroid that caused the Permian-Triassic extinction event which killed 96% of Earth's sea creatures. Of course, other ideas of what the object could be extend to a massive UFO, and even a portal to a mysterious underworld called the Hollow Earth. The reason scientists believe there is something is due to what is called the Wilkes Land gravity anomaly, first discovered in 2006. NASA spotted gravitational changes which indicate an object of immense size. The biggest clue that it is an asteroid is the fact it's sitting in a 300-mile wide crater, so that makes sense. Whether or not you agree is up to you until the day we finally uncover it, but we can all at least agree that something is down there. But what exactly? Who knows? Number 1. Aliens and Atlantis. Antarctica looks like a secret, lying in wait beneath the cold, hard ice and unforgiving mountains. So it's no wonder how year after year dozens of people across the Earth report UFO sightings on Google Maps, and strange snow patterns belonging to ancient beings. Despite its freezing temperatures, this place is a hotspot for conspiracies and mysteries, including those that believe the lost city of Atlantis is somewhere tucked away. Perhaps the massive unknown object beneath the crater is in fact just that, a lost city. After all, as I mentioned in part 1, Antarctica used to be a tropical oasis before it froze over. Who and what got left behind? Though it is highly likely that a civilization would have thrived here, scientists still haven't found any proof that one did, let alone anything that points to Atlantis. Just like the ocean, we have barely scratched the surface on what we know about this vast icy tundra, and we'll probably never really know.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have aliens. Wherever there is a mysterious piece of land, someone will say that aliens have been there. Antarctica is obviously one of those places. One of the more recent claims came in April 2017, when conspiracy theorists claimed to have found evidence of an underwater base off the coast of Antarctica. The 500-meter long object was spotted on Smiley Island. This image was posted to the website for UFO sightings hotspot. The first thing people usually say is that it just kind of looks like an iceberg that's split away from the mainland. The UFO sightings website disagrees though. They say the object does not fit in with the normal shapes of usual icebergs. They say that the shapes and forms from this iceberg look very different when compared with icebergs. if that makes sense. They believe that it could actually be a secret UFO vessel in disguise. What do you think? Next up at number 9 now, we have the ice wall. Flat earthers. Don't they always have the best theories? A lot of flat earth critics raised a very fair question of what exactly happens when people sail or fly to the end of the earth, and how do we not just, fall off? The Flat Earth Society believes that there is a massive 150-foot ice wall surrounding the coast of Antarctica. Not only is it tall, it's also very thick, several hundreds of meters thick to be precise. Flat earthers often cite the British explorer James Clark Ross. The British expeditions went to Antarctica in the mid-1800s. In his travel notes, he wrote of an icy wall, saying it was an obstruction of such character as to leave no doubt in my mind as to our future proceedings, for we might as well sail through the cliffs of Dover as to penetrate such a mass. Although, of course, many historians and those who have actually read the full extent of his journals will know that he is talking about an ice shelf, the Ross ice shelf that was named after him, although this shelf is just 50 meters high and was 600 kilometers long until it recently broke apart. To end this point about the ice wall, let me read one of my favorite quotes from the Flat Earth Society. Beyond the 150-foot ice wall is anyone's guess. How far the ice extends, how it terminates, and what exists beyond it are questions to which no present human experience can reply, apart from, I guess humans who study science, humans with telescopes, humans who have actually been to space. But yeah, forget about them. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Atlantis. For centuries, people have been searching for Atlantis, the lost island that Plato wrote about in the Republic. It was the home of the Atlanteans, a technologically advanced civilization who were said to possess almost mystical qualities beyond the average human group. Some people dismissed it as fiction, but others have become convinced that the island is real and that it was submerged under the water thousands of years ago. There's a theory that Atlantis was not submerged though, and that it actually was frozen in the ice of Antarctica. In April 2018, the YouTube channel Conspiracy Depot shared a Google Earth image which shows a strange area in the Antarctic ice. The image shows a series of lines that, according to the video, have an artificial origin and have recently been exposed due to melting ice in the area. Now they say the object is split into 3 parts that are all about 7 meters long. It almost seems too perfect to be formed naturally. Okay, moving on to number 7 now, we have Nazis. I remember one video I did a while back where I discussed in detail the theory that the Nazi Party survived World War II and are currently living in a base on the dark side of the moon. Yeah, that was an interesting theory, but so is this. A lot of people think that this secret base was actually in Antarctica. They say that scientists in the Third Reich mapped out an area of rivers and caves across Antarctica, then they discovered a large underground lake. They decided this would be the perfect place for their secret base. They supposedly called it Base 22 or New Berlin. For the conspiracy theorists who believe this, they are now split between the ones who think the base is just lost beneath the ice and the ones who think it is still home to a Nazi community all these years on. Next up at number 6 now, we have the bloop. You guys may have heard me mention this one before. The bloop was a nickname given to a strange sound picked up by hydrophones across the Pacific in 1997. The hydrophones are essentially like giant microphones listening out for sounds. They are positioned over 5,000 kilometers apart from each other, so it's not very often they are all picking up the same sound at the same time. Except this time, a number of them picked up the same loud ultra low frequency sound across the Pacific. Take a listen. Now to many people that sounds like an animal, some sort of creature that made a noise so loud it was picked up across Earth's biggest ocean. If such a creature did exist, it would be bigger than anything we've ever seen. That's the only way it could make a sound that loud. Well, scientists say this is not true and that the sound was actually caused by ice quakes in the Antarctic. It's the sound of ice breaking up and cracking, and the sound was picked up as the bloop. Some people still aren't buying that though and say that the sound may have come from Antarctica, but it was definitely biological in nature. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the hollow earth. Now you've all heard of the flat earth theory that we talked about earlier, but have you heard of the hollow earth theory? As you can probably guess from the name, it proposes that the planet is entirely hollow, empty on the inside, that we all live on a shell on the surface that is about 500 miles thick, which is actually only a fraction of the way to the center of the earth. So where does Antarctica come into this? Well, in December 2016, a study was published indicating there seems to be a massive anomaly underneath the ice of Antarctica. Some researchers believe it to be the remains of a truly massive asteroid that is more than twice the size of the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. Another theory though is that it could be the portal or entrance to this hollow earth we live on. I also read an article about Russian scientists drilling down through the ice in Antarctica. Hopefully they don't just kind of pierce through to the hollowness. What? Moving on to number 4 now, we have Area 51. It doesn't matter what kind of video I do about conspiracy theories, Area 51 will always seem to crop up in conversation, even in Antarctica. In March 2018, news articles began circulating about Arrival Heights, a secret laboratory located deep in the mountains of Antarctica that is called Area 122. That kind of makes you think of how many secret bases there have been between Area 51 and Area 122. Well, I guess the answer is 71, but yeah. Journalists from New Zealand investigated the lab and found that it was filled with very old technology. It was very strange, like something out of a movie. The computers had floppy disk drives. Some of you guys might be too young to even know what that is. There was also a huge computer called the Dobson spectrometer, which had a periscope sticking up out of the roof. So what is this whole place all for then? Well, they say it's to study the hole in the ozone layer above the continent. The old equipment is so sensitive that even breathing or speaking too loudly is said to damage it. Some people say that the base is hiding more secrets and that Area 122 could be the new Area 51. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the pyramids. In 2013, an article in ScienceRay.com claimed that 3 ancient pyramids had been discovered in the Antarctic by a team of American and European scientists. Relatively little is known about the pyramids, and the team behind their discovery has remained quite silent about the whole thing ever since. One piece of information that emerged was that they were planning an expedition to the pyramids to research them properly and determine if they were natural or man-made. If they're natural, they could simply be the product of erosion or tectonic activity, but if they're man-made, that would open up the suggestion of an ancient civilization. We know of only a handful of civilizations that built pyramids as big as the ones that have been discovered in Antarctica, most notably the Aztecs and the ancient Egyptians. Conspiracy theorists are already jumping on board with the Antarctica pyramids being proof of a lost pyramid building civilization. Next up on number 2 now, we have the Big Melt. As I'm sure you're all aware, Antarctica is covered in a sheet of ice. At some points, it's 3 miles thick, and as I'm sure you've seen on the news, the ice caps are melting. When you see those images of glaciers drifting out into the ocean, it's natural to think, what if it all goes? Well, that would obviously be a disaster. Some estimates say that if all the ice on the Antarctica sheet was to melt, sea levels would rise by 200 feet. To give you an idea of what this would do, the entire east coast of the US would be underwater, and Florida would pretty much vanish. It would just be entirely underwater. Another scary aspect of all of this is that we don't know how much or how quickly this could happen, or even what it would look like. Climate scientists still have a lot to understand when it comes to this process, but their worst case scenario paints a pretty grim picture. And finally, number 1 now, we have ancient diseases. As we all know, Antarctica is pretty cold. So cold, land is buried under 2 kilometers of ice. Recently in Siberia, in part of the Arctic Circle, nomadic tribes were affected by an outbreak of anthrax that came as a result of permafrost melting and unleashing an ancient strain. A 12-year-old boy died and thousands of reindeer became infected. Obviously, there are many reasons to be worried about the ice caps melting, but it seems that ancient diseases could be trapped under the ice that modern day humans and animals have no resistance to. As the ice is so thick, we literally cannot know what is under there and what might be lurking. It seems that the permafrost provides the perfect conditions for bacteria to remain alive, dormant for millions of years. Scientists are worried that a Pandora's box of illnesses we don't know how to cure are out there waiting to emerge one day. Starting off number 10 now, we have blood falls. In 1911, scientists noticed something pretty horrifying around cliffs in Antarctica. It looked like some of them were oozing blood. It shocked the world. What could possibly be producing these rivers of blood? Was there something hidden within the ice that we didn't know about? Something that could only exist in these hostile alien conditions of Antarctica? At the time, scientists scientists believed it was being caused by algae discoloring the water. The hypothesis was never verified though. In 2017, the mystery was finally solved thanks to research by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. The deep red coloring is due to oxidized iron in brine salt water. It's essentially the same process that makes iron go dark red when it rusts. When the iron-rich salt water comes into contact with the oxygen on the surface, the iron oxidizes and this colors the water and ice red. I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief now that there isn't some hellish blood monster living under the Antarctic ice. Next up at number 9 now we have the abandoned huts. On November 1st, 1911, British explorer Robert Falcon Scott departed from Cape Evans on his Terra Nova expedition, trying to become the first human to reach the South Pole. They made it to the South Pole, but sadly they found they had been beaten to it by a group of Norwegians led by Amundsen. The team faced unusually bad weather on their return journey and tragically died before they could even reach their hut with all of their supplies. The hut was used by another team in 1917, but after that it was abandoned. For years it was slowly covered in ice and snow until 1956 when a US expeditionary party dug it out. It was found to be in a remarkably well preserved state. The beds were as they left them, so too were their scientific instruments. Canned food still sits on the shelves. A London newspaper from that time is on one of the desks. The frozen and dry environment of Antarctica have preserved a lot of things, but decay does still occur there. Visitors to the Discovery Hut discovered the now century-old seal meat as smelling quite rancid, and some people thought that the huts themselves are now affected by fungal decay. Moving on to number 8 now, we have bacteria. In 2008, scientists managed to revive bacterium extracted from Antarctic ice that was 8 million years old. You heard me right, 8 million years. Right away, many people became concerned. Was this a danger? It sounded a bit like the start of a Hollywood movie where the bacteria goes on to wipe out the whole of humanity. The scientists assured the public though that there was nothing to worry about and that the bacteria was unlikely to cause human diseases. You'll note that they said unlikely though. It's not definitely impossible. This bacteria is so old that when it came into existence 8 million years ago, the common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees was alive on the planet. So, how are these things still alive? Well, Paul Falowski of Rutgers University described the bacteria as having been in a suspended state of animation for 8 million years, and that global warming melting glaciers could result in the release of more ancient organisms into the sea. Next up at number 7 now, we have the pyramid. In November 2016, the internet was abuzz with talk of a pyramid that had been found buried in the Antarctic ice. Now before you dismiss this as nonsense, take a look at this picture. Yeah, that does look a lot like a pyramid. It was first discovered by the British Antarctic expedition of 1910 to 1913. They were stunned by its appearance and decided to name it the Pyramid, a name still used on geological surveys of the area. It's located in the Ellsworth Mountains, which is a range more than 400 kilometers long. The pyramid is one of the peaks of this mountain range. Naturally, you know what I'm going to say next. Many conspiracy theorists stated that this is proof of an ancient civilization that lived on Antarctica before being consumed by the ice and their existence covered up by today's governments. Of course, experts have dismissed all of this, saying that pyramids are not a complicated shape and are not an uncommon appearance in nature. What do you guys think? Next up at number 6 now, we have the lake. Lake Vostok is one of the biggest lakes on the planet. If you've never heard of it, don't worry, that's probably because Lake Vostok is buried underneath more than 2 miles of ice in Antarctica. It's been covered in ice for at least 15 million years, but it's still liquid down there. The crushing layer of ice from above and geothermal activity below have ensured that. Its presence was first suggested in the 1960s by a Russian pilot who noticed a large smooth patch of ice above the lake from the air. Radar experiments by British and Russian researchers in 1996 confirmed the lake's existence. The lake is massive, 143 miles long, 31 miles wide, and up to 2,625 feet deep. In 2012, Russian scientists managed to successfully drill a hole down to the lake's water. They believe that down there is microbial life that is unique from everything else here on Earth, having been isolated for 15 million years. Now the search begins. Next up at number 5 now, we have Allen Hills 84001. In 1984, a team of US meteorite hunters discovered a Martian meteorite in Antarctica's ice. It was only about 4.3 pounds, but by 1996 it was causing quite a stir when a group of scientists claimed they had found evidence of microscopic life in the actual meteorite. Was this proof of life on Mars, or at least that life used to be on Mars because they thought it was fossilized? The media went into a frenzy either way. Even US President Bill Clinton gave a speech about it. The hysteria was because the strange chain structures on that meteorite looked like they could have been fossilized bacteria. There was also the fact that the meteorite broke off from Mars about 17 million years ago, during a time when Mars had liquid water on its surface and carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. It seemed like life could have been around then. Eventually these claims were rejected though, and the features of the meteorite were explained without requiring life to be present. The meteorite now remains on display in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the dinosaur. In February 2019, the fossil of a new species of reptile was announced. It had been found by researchers in the Antarctic ice during a 2010-2011 expedition. It's believed to be an early relative of dinosaurs who lived in Antarctica millions of years before the continent drifted to its position over the South Pole and became uninhabitable for most complex life forms. Around 250 million years ago, Antarctica was covered in lush forests and rivers with many species of wildlife living there, including reptiles. The temperature is thought to have almost never dropped below freezing point. The scientists named the iguana-sized reptile Antarctanax shackletoni. Antarctanax translates to Antarctic King, and Shackletoni is in honor of the Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton. Moving on to number 3 now, we have patchy mass. In June 2018, YouTube user Wow4Real made a video showing his discovery of a 14-mile structure buried in Antarctica. He made the discovery using Google Maps and described it as a patchy mass that you could easily see from outer space. He said he'd used Google Maps to search the entire continent before and had never found anything like this. He even pointed out that there were strange brush strokes over the mass, which made him think someone was trying to cover this up. It didn't take long before people started speculating about what was going on here. The YouTuber himself put forward the idea that if the brush effect was removed, perhaps we'd see some sort of giant UFO mothership buried in ice. In all probability, it's probably just a research facility, but we still don't know for sure yet, as this strange block still remains on Google Maps to this day. You can even go and see it for yourself. Coming in at number 2 now, we have the wreckage. In January 2013, 3 Canadian men took off in a plane from the Amundsen Scott South Pole Research Station en route to an Italian research base in Terra Nova Bay. At some point during the journey, the emergency transmitter went off and a search party was sent out to find them. Bad weather hampered rescue efforts, and after 6 days they finally found the plane, but it was too late to save them. It had crashed into one of Antarctica's highest mountains. The rescue team were unable to get into the cockpit and were only able to retrieve some luggage. After 4 hours there, they determined it was too risky to stay any longer, as the weather was taking a serious turn for the worse and they were afraid of an avalanche occurring. It took 9 months before another team set out during Antarctica's summer period to retrieve the frozen remains of the 3 Canadian men. And finally, number 1 now, we have Endurance. We talked about the explorer Shackleton earlier. Well, Endurance was the name of the ship that he used to go to Antarctica in the first place. The ship was abandoned by Shackleton and his team when she was crushed by ice in the Weddell Sea off Antarctica, causing her to sink. In the years since then, there have been 3 expeditions that have tried and failed to locate Endurance. In 2018, that changed though. A team at the Scott Polar Research Institute launched a new search using more sophisticated technology, such as GPS and drones, to help them see possible routes in the ice. They also used an autonomous underwater vehicle. The video you're watching right now was released in February 2019, and according to what I've read, the search for Endurance is happening at this moment, looking for a ship thousands of feet beneath the frigid waves. I thought I'd end on this one because it's not been discovered quite yet, and that's kind of exciting. There's a lot more to uncover in the incredible world of Antarctica.
Starting us off at number 10, we have Deception Island. In 1906, a Norwegian-Chilean whaling company started using Whalers Bay as a base for their factory ship. Other operations followed closely behind them, and then the next thing you know, a boomtown was born. But then, by just 1931, after a sweeping decline in the market for whale oil due to the Great Depression, the island was abandoned. Since then, it has quite literally become a ghost town, with visitors reporting seeing strange orbs of light coming from the abandoned huts, seeing apparitions of people walking around, and even hearing disembodied voices. So while the South Pole remains a harsh land with no official permanent population, it seems that ghosts who are unaffected by what makes the South Pole so difficult to endure have settled in and haunt all those who try to enter their domain. Next up at number 9, Wordie hut. Although it's named after James Wordie, who was the chief scientist for Sir Edmund Shackleton's endurance expedition in 1914, the Wordie hut was built much later in 1947. For years it had been rumored to be haunted by terrifying spirits, and after several reports, a group of paranormal researchers from Destination Truth decided to see for themselves and spend a night in the hut. When they arrived, they were immediately taken back by the energy of the cabin. They knew that something was there. That night, members of the team heard frantic flipping of light switches and slamming doors from rooms where no one was staying. Jars began falling off the shelves all on their own, and after their one-night stay, they left completely creeped out. Now, I always think a telling tale of if some place is truly scary is when paranormal investigators, people whose job is literally to investigate creepy stuff, get scared and don't want to come back. Well, even so, visitors have checked it out since, but all reported similar events that chilled them to the bone and have never returned. Next up at number 8, the ghost ship of Jenny. Thought to have been abandoned in port in 1823, this ship was thought to be lost forever. That was until a whaling ship made a horrifying discovery a few years later, back in 1840. As the legend goes, Jenny had gotten stuck in the ice while on its expedition, and no one knew where it had ended up or what had happened to the crew aboard. That was until the whaling ship discovered them, and believing it to be the legendary Jenny, decided to go on board to check out what might still be on it. When they made their way onto the ship, they were horrified to find all the bodies frozen solid and perfectly preserved by the ice. Allegedly, the crew found a note they believed to be written by the captain that read, May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. While some believe it's just folklore, others swear by the tale, claiming all the sailors of Jenny haunt the boat to this day. Coming in at number 7, Mountains of Madness. While Antarctica may be one of the most haunted places in the world, it is also home to some breathtaking scenery. But the Mountains of Madness kind of fall into the first category. Officially called the Gamburtsev mountain range, they are roughly the size of the Alps, but there is one catch. No one has ever seen them. But how could that be, I am sure you are wondering? Well, back in the 1950s, a group of Russian explorers discovered there were strange gravity fluctuations coming from below the ice. After a bit of sleuthing, they discovered the fluctuations to be from an entire subglacial mountain range hidden below 3 miles of ice. First of all, the fact that there is 3-mile deep ice is enough of a reason for me to never want to go there, but I digress. Scientists have compared it to studying another planet, which to some might be exciting, but to others they feel it's terrifying. No one knows what kind of life could be under there, what could have been preserved there for the last 250 million years, and some have even said they've felt a strange presence when they are near. Coming in at number 6, Shackleton's hut. Antarctica is mainly a destination visited by scientists and explorers, but considering many of the early explorers died while on these trips, it also makes a lot of sense as to why they are all haunted. And one man who claimed to be a non-believer of ghosts would return from his trip thinking much differently. His name was Sir Edmund Hillary, and he was a New Zealand mountaineer and explorer who in 1953, along with his Sherpa, was the first known person to reach the summit of Mount Everest. So after conquering the mountain, he was looking for another adventure and sought out the South Pole 5 years later. When he arrived, he stayed in Sir Ernest Shackleton's abandoned hut from his famous endurance expedition. And when he was there, he claims to have seen Shackleton's ghost walk towards him and welcome him to the hut before vanishing right in front of his eyes. Ever since, it's been known as a paranormal hotspot, and many who visit leave terrified by what they see. Next up at number 5, Scott's hut. During the early 1900s, there was a huge race to be the first country to reach the South Pole. Then in 1911, explorer Robert Falcon Scott and his team set out on a mission against Norway, later called the Terra Nova expedition, to do just that. While many explorers, Scott included, had explored Antarctica, none had managed to reach the pole.
And so the race was on. A hut was pre-constructed in Britain that was brought over as a base camp for the crew, and they set up near the Great Ice Barrier. Eventually, it was decided some of the men would stay behind with supplies and shelter, and the rest of the team would venture out further. But sadly, their mission was ultimately a bust, as by the time they reached the pole, the Norwegian flag had already been planted. So the men turned around to head back, but sadly due to frostbite, starvation, and disease, the men died off one by one and never made their return. Those that have visited the hut today claim to hear strange voices and footsteps all around the cabin. Apparently the minute you walk in, you feel as though you're being watched, and some even swear they've seen the ghosts of Scott and his men lurk inside. Next up at number 4, Ross Island. Home to one of the most recognized research stations across the continent, it's also the site of a devastating plane crash that left the island drowning in lost spirits. Back in 1977, New Zealand began operating sightseeing trips via plane over Antarctica. But in 1979, a true disaster would strike. Though exactly what happened is unknown, somehow the computer directing the flight got rerouted, and instead of taking its usual trip, it ended up flying dangerously close to a nearby mountain. All of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, the plane crashed, instantly killing all 257 passengers and crew members on board. Today, those that visit the island claim to hear unsettling voices in the darkness, as well as strange ghostly footsteps. Some say they have even seen what they believe to be the flight victims wandering around the frigid landscape, eerily moaning and crying at night. So while there may be some beautiful places to visit, you might want to steer clear of this haunted island altogether. Coming in at number 3, a Soviet military base. Back in 2009, scientists passing through the icy scape came across a strange and concerning discovery. While exploring what's called the Pole of Inaccessibility, which is the point furthest from the sea in Antarctica, the group found a random monument with a bust of Vladimir Lenin perched on top. Now, if you don't know who that is or why that's a little bit creepy, let me explain. Vladimir Lenin was the founder of the Soviet Union and first head of government under the new regime. It was under his ruling that Russia became a one-party communist state. So upon discovering his lone bust in the middle of nowhere, the scientists decided it might be a good idea to keep exploring. After some digging, they happened upon an old Soviet military base that was covered by mountains of snow, and they realized that the bust was facing the direction of Moscow. Now, no one knows how long the bust has been there, and even creepier, no one knows why it's there. But many suspect that it might be the place where Lenin was buried back in 1924, and it's thought that his ghost may still haunt the area to this day. Coming in at number 2, Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the southernmost volcano on Earth, and it's still very much active. Some like to refer to it as the place where fire meets ice, as while inside the mountain it's swirling with molten hot magma, the outside remains frozen solid and is surrounded by ice caves. And while that might sound super cool, it is also the site of the infamous Ross Island plane crash that I already spoke about, and so it's littered with ghosts seeking revenge for having their lives taken too soon. And while many of the spirits are known to roam around the entire island, frightening visitors at every chance, some of the spirits are stuck in the place that took their lives. Some say that if you walk past the mountain, you can still hear the screams of the victims who lost their lives to the crash. And last up, in our number 1 spot, we have the Drake Passage. The Drake Passage may just be the most well-known part of all of Antarctica, but probably not for a good reason. Widely considered the most powerful convergence of seas, the Drake Passage is the point where the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean converge with the southern seas, and it is notorious for its treacherous waters. It's a great feat for anyone to even dare to cross it, and it's estimated over the years that more than 1,000 people have died attempting to pass through its terrifying and turbulent waves. Many believe that all who have lost their lives to the passage remain, haunting the waters to warn those that attempt the feat to turn back. Or maybe they're trying to bring you into their realm with them. Either way, it's best to stay far, far, far away, because even if the ghosts don't get you, the waves almost certainly will.